Welcome to our new series, Living Life, with real people and real stories. This series is a window into the human experience. It's about where we've been more recently, where we are today, but also, and most importantly, where we're going. This is an opportunity for us all to step back, to reassess and redefine how well-being shows up in our lives each and every day. So I hope that you can sit back, you can listen, learn, and connect.
Yeah, so I think this is about story, and I think right now more than ever, people need story. They need to hear it, they need to share it, and so I'm looking forward to hearing more about your story, what it's been like in the past, what it's like in the present, and also where you're headed, right? So to kick it off, let's go back in time.
Okay, so from my childhood, I always felt like a bigger child, always felt like I was an overweight child. I was very sporty and I was quite gifted in sport. There was some name calling and things like that, and it was just because I was bigger. I was probably eating more and playing more than others. And
What sport?
Rugby.
Rugby.
Rugby was a big one. Football, rugby, team sports really were my thing. Like I said, my mind had an image of me, probably, and it's probably to do with the name calling and other things, that I was a larger child, and I was overweight. I look back now and I think, well, I wasn't that overweight. I was actually quite healthy and quite big. Where everyone might have been quite slight, I was quite big and strong. But in my head, I was overweight and or obese. But yeah, I had I was very successful at rugby. I kind of had a career planned out for my life.
Rugby was going to be the...
I wanted, that's what I always wanted to do. And then injury struck. And
was there a specific injury that you had?
So I broke my collarbone in 3 places, and then I went back too soon and then dislocated both my arms, and the physio said you'd never play again.
Shoulders are the worst. I mean, no injury's good, right?
No,
but shoulders,
in a scrum,
even like sitting down, standing up, it isn't until you injure your shoulders that you realize, oh, my shoulders are a part of every movement.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, I fell deeply into depression, really, and it hit hard. I was still eating like I was training, but I'm not training. But even that then got relaxed. It wasn't good foods I was eating. I was replacing with things that make me feel better. I ended up going to college and trying to fill that with music, because I was quite creative, so I wanted to do something around music. But again, I'm not an academic. I just struggle with that side of things. I ended up changing jobs into the restaurant trade, so I ended up working in restaurants, and again, that comes with drinking and excessive eating, and plus you have a team around you again, and you spend all your time with them. So it gave you something, gave you that sense of belonging. Yeah, and things get tiring after a while as well. So after I left there, I in my early 20s, I went to volunteer at a soup kitchen for homeless people, and I really enjoyed it. I got a lot back from that, instead of preparing food for people who are paying for it. It was about preparing food for people who really appreciate it, who have nothing, and I really liked that. And
what did you notice about there's something about being of service where we get out of our own way, get out of our own head. What did you notice about being able to provide something really important, food, to a group of people that needed it? What impact did it have on you?
It gave me worth. So it made me feel like I was doing something for the right reasons, and it also kind of it makes you realize you are not. I had issues, but what the stories I was hearing, people go through stuff, and it's I'd had it easy, really, compared to a lot of people I met. And
up till that point, you didn't think you had.
I didn't think I did. No. Again, it's a very stressful job in the sense of, you know, when I was volunteering at first, and then I went into paid stuff, into a night shelter and working with people around heroin addiction and mental health and homelessness, and taking on a lot of people's problems as well, and probably not knowing what to do with those things. So you're supporting people, and it's really easy to give advice. It's very hard to take advice, your own advice even, or even other people and what people are saying to you. You know, I wanted to help people, so I was doing that. But again, I was very young in that sense of like life experience. I was working with people, you know, 30s, 40s, and I'm, you know, younger than them, trying to give them advice. And lots of things were going on in my life at the time, at that time. And yeah, I attempted suicide. And that, you know, it was a cry. I really wanted help, but I didn't know how to ask for it, and I didn't really know, you know, what to do. You know, and it makes you realise, you know, you do have some amazing people around you. I put people through a lot as well, through you know, through going through that. But I also now realise, when I look back on that and reflect on it, I have been through 10 times worse since. But I've grown and I've learned to manage with those things and manage that.
What was, I mean, and well done for, you know, being able to sit here and share the story. Not everybody gets that. What was that like, right? It isn't something that just, you know, happens in one day. You just feel like, right, there's a buildup of some kind. What was that like for you?
A lot of my, when I look back to it, a lot of my stuff was environmental. A lot of things, I wasn't looking after myself. There was things that were out of my control, but also affecting things around my life. And it got to a point where I had started to believe that actually everyone around me would be better off. If I wasn't here, the problem would disappear, or the problems would disappear. And you know, so from things like money issues, relationship issues, all those things, and they weren't huge. They you know, to me they were at the time. I remember it and being in a dark place. And even now I can look back and think, oh, was I being selfish? You know, and in some ways I think it possibly was, but I wasn't being very kind to myself either. I really wasn't being kind to myself, and I wasn't. Yeah,
it's like that internal experience starts to be expressed externally, and you know, whether it's alcohol or drugs or excess in some other way, it just compounds the.
So yeah, and my life has always been kind of excess. So whether it be food, whether it be alcohol, whether it be being the loudest, whether it be being the most competitive, you know, at a party or something, you know, I would push for that, or strive for that. That's what I wanted to be. And it's strange because I was such a quiet child, but I've made up for it in my later years of being like, wanted to be the best, wanted to be better. But also that's probably where I came in with the charity work and trying to help people, was trying to maybe suppress some of that and give back a bit. So yeah, that was really dark day, and I sought help after that, and I went through therapy. It didn't agree with me personally. Me and the therapist, we didn't connect. I just came out there feeling quite bad, but I was then really lucky, and I was offered, someone was going doing life coaching or training, and they offered me to be one of their coachees for a test, and I said, yeah, let's go for it. And I really bounced off that, and that really got me.
It felt like there was movement to it.
Exactly. And that's what
you need that, it sounds like.
That.
What is, just really quickly, because I want to transition to the upward trajectory, or at least the kind of pursuit of, right? When you say unhappy, and I know you mentioned suicidal and everything, but what was it you were dealing with? Like, if you could label it, what were the things that came up?
I mean, I've not had it that difficult.
Well, don't say that, because then that takes away from the reality that you still experience.
I mean,
right?
yeah. For me, it was knowing that I should be better, but I'm not being better, or I'm not being, you know, I'm not taking my opportunities, and I'm not looking after myself, and that is really hard to face daily. Like, you know, you should do X, Y, and Z. You've been that sportsman, you've been that person, you've been that athlete, and why can't you bring this back on? Why can't you switch on? Why can't you be happy as well? People expect you to be happy.
So what was the wall? Like, was it self-worth? Was it anxiety?
I think it was more about the self-worth and whether I deserved it, and whether sometimes I would always go to achieve things, and then at the last hurdle just take them away from myself almost, and not go through that, because I didn't like deserving.
Like as though success was more uncomfortable than the place you were in.
Well, also success, and then probably where, you know, I've been successful and then fallen, it hurts to fall. So if you succeed, if you just don't succeed sometimes, or don't look after yourself, there's not a fall. And even now I have anxieties around, I've lost a lot of weight and things, and I've got anxieties about going back to those, that scares me. But I know I'm driven now by how I feel, and how better I feel, and how happy I am.
I like that. Yeah.
So then all of a sudden you opened up a little bit of space for Matt, and let's go from there now. Like where?
So I attended an event you were at, and I think again I like to have a word in. I think I challenge you guys to how do you help? What do you do that's so special? What do you guys do? And then that's when I met James, and he came and spoke to me, and we linked up, and I've worked with James since then, and obviously it was great because it was real basics, and that's what I needed at the time. Was to look at water intake, good sleep, those things, all those things we just take for granted. And I just started to see real small changes happen. I started to feel better, and I thought, right, well, and I've got pictures there of me working out later on, just at the start of the pandemic, and you'll see a change. Do you want me to show you that?
Definitely.
So then the pandemic hit us, and all the gyms closed. So I was in the gym for 2 weeks, and then the gyms closed, and then so it was doing virtual work with James online, and here it is. This was my homemade bench, and sorry, it's a video, but
wow.
Where were you at this point?
So that's in my, that's literally the first month into the pandemic, and that's me.
Just in the backyard?
Yeah, working out in the backyard. Pictures of us just out walking, and that was when I first started to lose weight. So this was probably in July last year. So I just started to feel better, and I thought I'd take a picture. I look at it now, and I still don't recognise myself. We were lucky enough in the pandemic to get out to Greece in August, when we were allowed to travel, and we had the corridors. And
was that like one of those trips that you were working towards?
Yeah, it was. And again, I worked with Pavelka on with the anxieties around that, because it was an all-inclusive holiday. It was, I'm going to gorge, I'm going to do all these things, but again, we set up a plan before it. That is, my routine and my safe space at home is okay to be broken up by holiday and reward, but to make sure when we go back, that's where my, my safety, and my routine is. I did put on a bit of weight. So what? I ended up coming back. I ended up losing that all straight away, and then, so around that time, I got down from 24 stone, which I was in the January. I was 24 stone, and by August I got down to about 18 stone. And then by October I'd got down to 15 stone. Wow. And I'd started the Couch to 5K. I'd never been a runner, and they closed down the gyms, and I needed to do something. So I was like, I'm going to do Couch to 5K. And so I started it. I've always classed myself as not a runner. I now class myself as a runner because I can run.
That's really important, because I think, the running kind of culture and community suggests, otherwise, especially when you get into kind of elite running, half marathon. Yeah. It's like if you don't look a certain way, if you don't run at a certain pace, then
you're not accepted. But that's not the case. I think it was more about challenging myself. And again, I've always loved team sports and competing, but actually this gave me a chance to, James made me see that actually I need competition, but I can compete with myself, and I can improve and get better by myself. So, and then it was, over Christmas I did overindulge. I did put on weight, and that made me realise, because that relationship I have with food, I could see that I'd almost saved it up to like go crazy there, and then all in and all or nothing, and then that's where I kind of switched with I think my relationship with food now is different, because I came back from that, and that was a lot of hard work then to start to get rid of that excess weight I'd put on, and I thought there's a lot of undoing here, but also mentally I felt like, not that I stepped back so far, but more like I didn't enjoy it. Like, I enjoy the recovery part of food, and I love that kind of getting together side of it, and that's real wholesome and a good feeling. But the fact that the feeling unwell, the feeling that I've not nourished myself and not worth it, and so from the 27th of December, everything, we were in lockdown, and 2020. I thought, I'm going to continue the running thing. I've actually quite enjoyed it over Christmas. I mean, and I was getting up at, I think it was 6:30 every morning, and I was going for a run, and I didn't stop then. So I did 5k, at least 5k every day. I then ran, I did a half marathon in April, just a route I'd been walking over lockdown, which I could barely walk at the start of lockdown. The first lockdown, I could not. I came back sweating. It took 5 hours to walk it. I ran it in 2 hours and 9 minutes, I think it was. I ran it, and that was non-stop. It wasn't the fastest, I know, but it was, for me, it was a massive achievement. And so I've just non-stop the snowballing of progression, really. And
you like that, though. That's that kind of sportsman mentality, right?
I need that, and James picked up on that early, really, and that's why he threw in challenges for me and
to keep you moving.
I needed to challenge myself, but it needed to be something that I wanted to do, and often those things are things that I've never done. I've managed to stay off alcohol as well for the pandemic, and I know people have really struggled around that, but it's one of the things I thought while it's on. So one of my fears, going forward, is possibly is there room for alcohol in my life? I haven't seen I haven't used it over the pandemic, but I see a lot smaller part of my life than I used to. I don't see the. I used to see it as a socialising thing, but I think I've even started to look at how I socialise in the future will be different as well. So.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Especially culturally, growing up in Texas and knowing the Brits. It's part of the culture, right? It's part of, and it's attached to socializing, it's attached to joy, it's attached to all the things that we want as human beings or need. As soon as you get rid of it, though, for a lot of people, it's like, well, now I've got to be me, right? It's like, wait a minute. And, and I think falling back in love, like that little boy that was running around playing sports, like, you didn't need alcohol for that, right? Getting back to that place is the goal, I feel, for a lot of people who struggle with alcohol. Maybe not alcoholism, but having alcohol in their lives and having those days where they wake up and they don't feel at their best. Like, that's not worth it, right, for you? Because then that tick it's not there.
And that's why I haven't, some people will reward themselves with those, stimuli to do it. But like you say, the next day you feel rubbish, you don't want to do it, and then your tick's not there, and then you're not being the best version of you. And so that's where I've kind of noticed that relationship with alcohol, and it's just probably not saying that's necessary, and definitely with food, like. Especially even when you're running and the day before, if you've had an off day, I'm not going to say, I don't want to demonize any foods, because you shouldn't. And that's where my relationship with food, I've always demonized carbs, demonized chocolate.
But that means there's conflict, right? That in itself means, I'm up against this, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so, I'm allowed that, but in moderation, I can have that. And that's why I haven't really had, I've been quite routined in what I have when I have it, in the sense of what it is, because having a bit of planning has helped. But generally speaking, that I haven't taken anything out You know, I've lowered stuff in areas, so 'cause I love bread, but I know I can't eat a loaf of it now, you know, but I can have slices of it. And that's what I've learned, that, you know, it's that I can have that, I just can't have all of it.
That's not an easy one for people. It's a, I don't want to say it's a skill to get to that point. I think, you know, for people that are emotional eaters or that have, you know, food addiction, it's, that relationship is corrupt, right?
Yeah,
and so
definitely. In some of the ways where I've grown up with this, and like it's starting to sink in, is that investment in myself and recognizing how I feel right now, and on those off days, knowing I can feel good, I can get back to that. I can get back to that, and it's okay to be not okay today. But tomorrow we're going to do the things that we invest in ourselves, and we look after ourselves, and we take that, you know, that mindfulness stuff we've learned, and that time out for me, and invest a little bit in me to look after ourselves. But that doesn't mean eating chocolate. That doesn't mean sitting and watching Netflix all day. It doesn't mean dinner. It means doing the basics. It means get the good night's sleep, drink the water. It means just reminding myself that those are the things that make me feel good.
Delayed gratitude.
Delayed gratitude. The instant gratitude, gratification stuff is so easy to fall down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, we know what it equals, right? So it's like, you know, that short-term pain, long-term gain formula, I think, for life is solid. It, you know, you can't really refute it. Short-term pain meaning like not going for the chocolate, going for the water.
Exactly.
You know?
And one of the things I've learned from you guys is around building that step by step and improving just a little bit. And I almost took my goal away. Take it off the table. The goal of losing weight has always been there. I took the weight loss off the table and just said, right, I just need to get better. And that's where I started to focus on those basics, those little fundamentals that James was putting in place for me. Just saying, get these right, and then do the next lot of basics, and then train a little bit, and then do this program. And that's what I did. It snowballed. And I was like, I had a plan probably to get down to about, you know, 13 stone, which is what I ended up at, 13 stone at about 5-6 years from starting working with you guys. That was the plan. Like, just take it off the table. It's not going to happen for ages. Within 10 months, you know, I'd lost 3/4 of that. Within 12, I'd lost, you know, I'd gone the whole way and got to 13 stone. You know, I'd lost 11 stone.
Yeah, but you also, and that's incredible, man. That's freaking incredible. Like, that is, like, that's, you know, for anybody that's listening to this conversation, that's possible, right?
Yeah,
and
hugely possible.
The guy that was, you know, suicidal, the guy that was sitting in that space didn't think that was possible, and that guy is listening to this, right?
Yeah, so, he is. Yeah,
he should be.
Yeah.
So, now we had a conversation before we started having this conversation, and it was around how you would put weight back on.
Yeah.
I think the message around what you're about to share is really important. So, can you give us a window into that?
So, after I did the half marathon, which was never a goal, by the way. It was never a goal to run that. I just wanted to become a runner and look after my health, really, was the goal. I ended up doing it, but then the gyms opened back up. So I decided that being an ex-rugby player, you know, I've always had quite broad shoulders, and when I looked in the mirror, I actually, for the first time, saw a real slender person with no shoulders. And that didn't feel like me. I wanted, you know, I did want it to be, you know, I've always seen myself as a broad person, and I saw a slighter person. So I was like, actually, I do want to do some resistance training, because I have got weaker as well. That's, you know, what comes with it.
Muscle disappears as well as fat.
I've got weaker. So so for the last month and a bit, I've been in the gym training since they opened. With a program from you guys, and I've put on a stone, but I'm okay with that, because I have built strength, but I also have the tools that and I recognise that in life, that I'm going to go up in weight and I'm going to go down in weight, and that's fine as long as I can control the direction up and down, and that's in my control. It'll be fine. And now I know it's possible as well.
Yeah.
I think that's going to stay with me. It's locked in now that I can do this. So that's something I'll keep with me for life. And now having a life back really and being able to do things. Freedom. Massive.
Yeah, and I think the message behind that is really important, because I know so many people obsess over the scale, right? We've been doing this for a long time now, right? It's like the scale does not tell the truth. No. And I think for a lot of us, we see weight go back on, and all of a sudden that kid inside that says, I'm overweight, I'm not good enough, comes to the forefront and starts running the show. It's like, I'm 36, but this 5-year-old is now telling me what to do. And I think the fact that you're able to have a healthy relationship with that weight and say, well, this is muscle, this is because I'm working harder in a different way, is really important. But I also think, like, for anybody out there trying to lose weight, that old formula of calories out, calories in, right? Like 3,500 calories equal a pound of weight. Yeah. Well, we'll just get moving and create a deficit of 500 calories a day, and then we'll lose some weight. Like, that's not healthy. No. And understanding, basal metabolic rate and increasing BMR, which is exactly what you're doing right now, is in a lot of ways healthier than losing weight, right? Yeah. Being able to metabolize things. Like, when we run, our BMR shrinks. That's just how that goes, right? If we're not getting in proper nutrients. So adding that resistance training is going to be massive for you in how you feel, your immunity, your shape.
It was tough when I started. It was tough. I couldn't lift the weights I used to lift. I couldn't, everything. I really had to drop my ego. And I did have conversations with you guys about that, about my ego and having to.
How does that come up? How does the ego come up for you?
That's a tough one. That's real tough, because again, I've always, like I said to you earlier, I want to be the best, but I've learned from the weight loss stuff that these things happen from small starts, basics. Do it right, get good form, do this stuff right, then build the weights. That's not important, and that is literally been an improvement thing, a small improvements, change of habits, and moving forward. And that's why, like I said, I don't have a typical goal of I want to lift so many. I do have the pull-up challenge. I've never been able to lift my own weight, so I have I want to be able to do 8 pull-ups. And so and I can't do 1 at the moment, but I'm going to get there. I know I will, and I'm going to keep on with the training, and I will get there. But
amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we can bring this thing home. What's next, right? You're introducing more resistance training, but looking into the future, we're going to be coming out of lockdowns. You're going to be going back into the office. You're going to be able to go to restaurants. There will be alcohol. So life's going to transition again to something that looks different. So what's next for you? What do you need to be aware of? You mentioned some of those things already, but.
So for me, it's going to be about introducing things slowly, and it's about monitoring those things as they get introduced. So, I think pre-planning has been key. Like, so if I'm planning, if I know the restaurant, what can I eat there that's not going to totally, throw us off, or am I going to? Is it a time to enjoy myself today? And then, look at increasing the training, or those kinds of things. And
you started this talking about yourself. You were active, you weren't very academic, and you painted this picture of who you were earlier in life. And I think about like what I just heard from you, and I think of the pyramid, Maslow's hierarchy, and like you're at the top. Self-actualization. You know who you are. You know what you need to do, and I think it's a really powerful message that people need to hear. Man, well done. Yeah, really good stuff.
Thank you.